All right. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it through this podcast with this.
I have my doubts.
With this crew. Okay. So I'm here with Nigel Ito. So Nigel handles operations at the office. Anthony Molinaro, people will be familiar with as well, because you do some podcast episodes and different things. So if they've been listening to the podcast and this, they've like heard you, Anthony. And then with Allizah Concepcion.
Yeah.
Kind of butchered it a little bit.
No, you're good.
Okay. And Allizah joined the team, a month ago?
Almost 2 months ago.
Is it 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Okay. And we're forcing her on the podcast. She was kind of holding onto the door, and we dragged her into the room and we locked the door. She can't. So
True story.
Yeah. So what we wanted to talk about today is, I guess there's different conversations going on in the office with different perspectives about how people are feeling, because there's a lot of headlines around, a lot of news about, hey, I'll say millennials. I don't even know the year. You guys can clarify the years and your ages and if you're a millennial or not. But I just mean like different generations and how some generations now in Canada are feeling lost. There's these articles come out there. They feel hopeless about things, and they're living in Toronto and they're just like, I just can't believe this. It's no good, and I just feel like I have nothing to live for in my life. There's these types of opinions, and I guess everyone's at different places. So I think that's where I wanted to come from and talk about that and just get a sense of where you guys are from, because you're at different stages. So maybe to give everyone an idea of, I don't know, what do we do with this, by age? How do we do this? Nigel, how old are you?
I'm 34.
So are you a millennial?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm right.
This is like a dead millennial.
Definitely millennial.
Dead middle.
Yeah. I'm near the end, I think, actually.
So that the dead middle or dead?
Dead middle.
Dead
Middle.
So you
like
shortened
dead on.
You shortened it to dead, but that's not.
Well, he's dead inside because he's millennial, right? There's no hope.
Are you not? Okay. You're technically not a millennial?
I just got in, because I'm 95. So I'm 29.
So you're 20.
So you're a millennial.
Yeah, I just
made a cut.
So you're also dead.
Yeah.
Okay. No, because he's not dead middle.
Days.
Let's remove the dead stuff. Allizah,
2000.
So you were born in 2000?
Yeah.
And so then you're 24. So are you a millennial?
No. she's the Gen Z.
That's considered Gen Z. It doesn't even matter to you. Does anyone this matters to people?
No,
I don't think it matters.
No.
Okay, but
it's just fun talking smack between the different
100%.
groups.
Sure.
Okay, so to give everyone some context, that's where we're from. So then, Anthony, why don't you start us off, because you were coming at this from a place where you're like, I'm kind of pissed off.
Yeah. It's I don't feel very hopeful given the current system that things are going to improve. I think the currency is going to continue to debase. I think that the cost of living is going to go up forever in this current system that we're in, and I don't see it happening any other way. I think the average person that doesn't understand that is going to get caught completely off guard. And I think if you do understand it, you can position yourself possibly in a new system that's being born. I'm talking about Bitcoin, to maybe benefit from that transition. But I think for the average person, I think, it's hard to be hopeful. So then the way you're sounding, you look at Bitcoin as your only hope? Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. Because the currency is just going to debase forever. So the problem is
the currency's been debasing for decades.
Exactly. But the assets are getting further and further out of reach. Like you can just buy less and less house.
Mm-hmm.
Like at least the boomers had a chance to buy up the houses, and now they have all the wealth. But if you can't get into the housing market, you can still buy stocks and stuff. But
I'm not a boomer. And I mean, I was able to.
Yeah. So I'm making a big generalization there, but I guess older generations had more of an opportunity when it comes to owning assets. But if you don't own assets in this day and age, you're going to continue to get debased. Your time's getting debased. Your life's getting debased. I don't see any hope without owning assets. And a lot of those assets, the best quality assets at least, like maybe single family rental properties in Southern Ontario, are now out of reach for people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, Nigel, what do you think about that?
I think...
so you're old. So you're a few years old. Few years older.
A few years wiser, for sure. I think Bitcoin definitely is part of the hope that I have. I think also when you said that, people are hopeless, I think a big part of that comes from the ability to buy a home.
But you own a home.
I do. Yep.
Right. So you're married, you live in a home with your wife.
Yep.
So
I'm more hopeful overall for the country than maybe Anthony just described.
Did you attribute some of that to owning a home?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people who say, "Oh, we're hopeless," it's impossible. A big thing is for young people when they're moving out, from their parents' homes and they go out to look and buying a property. It's hard to really catch a certain price point, like when it keeps moving, right? So the target keeps moving. So 5 years ago, I went to, say I'm just trying to buy my first home. I started planning for this 5 years ago, putting money aside. I'm planning on buying a $500,000 home. Goal is to get $100,000. So I have this plan, saving every 2 weeks. Get there 5 years later. Guess what? That $500,000 property is $850,000, right? So that's something where you hear that it is kind of hopeless, because you're like, okay, I'm saving, I'm doing everything right, I'm doing my best to save what I can, and eventually own an asset, and then it just keeps getting further and further away.
So in the last, excuse me.
And that's not even an asset. That's a place to live and like raise a family and
For
have
sure.
stability in your life. Like, we're not even talking about assets at this point. We're just talking about a base for your life.
Okay, but then and Allizah, I want to ask you in a second, but just to Nigel's point here. The last time, so we just went through this big inflationary run up in asset prices, specifically properties, if that's what we're talking about, right? Now, the last time we had something like this, and when prices corrected, and they were corrected more heavily than they have now, but if we look in the late 80s, early 90s, prices then grinded sideways for a period of time, for years. So if we were looking at this, you used a 5-year example. If you were looking at this at another 5-year example, and prices weren't escalating like that because they're kind of correcting as some dynamics kind of catch up and we go more towards a long-term trend, does that then change the opinion? Because do you feel like potentially there's some people that are more frustrated at this current situation, so like more in Anthony's shoes, because of what's happened over the last number of years, like just a more recent history, and that's what's causing it, and that it's actually can be corrected? If things maybe call it housing prices grind sideways for 5 years, does that then ease the pain, because you're like, oh my God, okay, I can actually save some money and maybe move towards that then?
It helps you plan. I mean, if you have a plan and you're making X amount and you're able to put a specific amount aside and you have this goal in mind, yeah, if the prices are the same and, the down payment to get your 20% is the same, yeah, it helps.
Okay. But what dampened the house prices? It was just the interest rates being raised more aggressively than they ever have before. So now your borrowing costs are much higher. So now you actually can't qualify because of the borrowing costs, not because of the purchase price. So it hasn't solved the problem.
That's a valid point.
Actually peak unaffordability in Canadian history right now, even though prices have come down 20 to 30%.
It's actually gone down a little bit now, but yeah, it was a little while ago.
The peak unaffordability?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, but it was.
I'm joking with it. It's marginally changed, but yeah.
So yeah. Oh yeah. So the 25 basis points, right? Yeah.
No. Even before that, because prices came off even with the, yeah.
Okay. But the point is the same, right? The bigger point. It's like, that hasn't changed the affordability. Now, I'm not saying buckle down, don't work hard, give up. Like, I work hard.
Well, I mean, yeah. I want to we can.
But I think these are just fundamental problems. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's different things to think about. It hasn't changed affordability if you're sticking with the same down payment. But if you put a bigger down payment down, you still have higher interest costs than you would have. But it can change the affordability. Like some of the problem might just be that maybe we don't have to like borrow every last dollar we can to buy everything. Like, you can buy a TV and you can put it on 50 payment plan if you want, or you can kind of save some money and buy the TV. So there's maybe in our society, the way we've used debt a lot of times can be part of the problem. But let's leave that aside for a second, because Allizah brings a little bit of a different dynamic. This is what's very interesting about. So maybe you can share, Allizah, just kind of where I'm curious as your opinion about how you're feeling about this whole thing, and maybe kind of some background just to give some context about where you kind of fit into this as well.
Yeah, well, just by listening to that, I am very different from all of you guys. I think because I am an international student, so I came here with a purpose of actually staying. So that means I need to think about what the future is like for me. But I can't look way too far ahead. Short term is what I'm looking at, which is staying in Canada. And I see myself renting for quite a while. But then I earn way more than people who works in the Philippines, which gives me an advantage to start investing soon. And that for me is an advantage already, because I don't see myself actually being a full citizen in Canada. I want to keep my citizenship in the Philippines so I can invest on properties and on businesses. And that's
in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's very essential because that's how I see myself moving forward in the future, like, retiring, because it's so much easier for me and cheaper to invest in the Philippines compared to Canada.
So you're thinking if you can stay here for a period of time
Yep.
and get some savings, then those savings are going to go further in the Philippines so you can make those investments there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because do you come in with purchasing power with the Canadian dollar versus the Philippine currency?
I do now, yeah.
You do?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting that you're looking at the same kind of some similar things that they're talking about as well,
Yeah.
because you're like, for you to get ahead,
Yeah.
you feel that you need to invest and own assets in the Philippines.
Yeah. Like, I grew up in a family who owned businesses ever since I grew up, so I don't really have a very present parents if they're watching this anytime soon. But yeah, so like I grew up with my parents always doing business, and I think it's like the way to like own my time, living life in your own terms. And I know I wanted to invest in the future, but low maintenance. So I wanted to do like real estate.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because I worked here. It's because I really intend on doing that in the future.
But then what about the cost of living here? Because you're here as a student, and so
Yeah.
obviously, like, we've all been in a student situation. So when you're, as a student, you start working your initial jobs and stuff, your expenses are higher than your income.
Sure.
Or so is that a barrier to you? Like, is that something that you're like, well, this is just, it's unattainable? Like, because I hear that some people feel like it's just unattainable because the
Yeah.
cost of living here is so high. But it sounds like from you, you're like, no, I don't think that's unattainable.
Well, I guess that's the difference between like students like me and other students who are actually funding their own studies and their cost of living. Coming here, I had my full support from my parents. It wasn't hard for me to like get started. What's hard for me is like to be on my own independently because I don't want to depend on them for too long. Because I came here telling them, here's my proposal, I'm coming to Canada, and I'm not going to ask for your money for, after 2 years or so. And I want to live up to that promise. And I did, but yeah, I think that's the difference. Like if you came here getting a loan from the bank back from your place and paying that loan off, and also surviving by the job that the job you have in Canada, and then doing your studies, that's hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So then Anthony, hearing that, then, as someone like me, I mean, I grew up here. I lived at home while I was going to school. So basically I had the support of my parents when I was doing that. Even during my first job for, I guess, I don't know how many years, but a few years, I was living at home while I was working. So I was fortunate enough to be able to kind of save some money that way. Actually, that's how I was able to start investing. I was still living at home with when I bought my first property. But so you lived in Canada during that time too. She's coming here doing that with, in a similar situation because you were living at home, had to support your parents and stuff like that. Yeah. So then how does that, like, isn't that kind of a little
It's a good perspective because it reminds you of like where Canada does stand like internationally in terms of opportunities, and we're still at the top of that list.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a great perspective to hear, and I think that can be true while at the same time it's getting a lot worse here. Yeah. I think both things can be true at the same time. It's like we've rode a lot of momentum to build this awesome country. Now things are clearly going in the wrong direction for everybody, for international students, for people that live here. So I think I acknowledge both things at the same time, Sure,
yeah, because like Canada offers a pathway to like immigration with low skill set in terms of like working. So they open opportunity for international students, and that's like you just have to study, work for like 2 years, and we can give you a permanent residency. But then, throughout the years, I feel like there's something different with the system, and it's not just like people who actually have genuine interest in studying and then staying. They took advantage of the opportunity to actually do something about the system, get in, and then just work as soon as they get in. It's not even studying anymore. But they do offer a good program in terms of like immigrating, like compared to Europe or US. Europe, you have to study their language, and here you just have to study English. And for most third world countries, you have to study English since you're like, kindergarten. So it's easier for them to migrate here compared to like Europe. It's faster in Europe, in US, sure, but it's easier here.
And you came, so when you chose Canada, did you come because it was easier? or like what were the other reasons? You don't. I mean, have to. Share as much or as little as you would like.
As much as I'm not going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But no, it's easier, and there's a certainty that you'll get permanent residency.
I see. So the path to permanent residency seem more. But nothing's 100%, but it seemed more certain than in some other options. Well, look, there's a story that came out recently that I saw about the LMIA program. Did I say that right? That's like foreign temporary workers, right? Yep. And they were bringing some people. There's been now things structured, so some people are bringing them in, and they're offering them a job. They're paying them money because they have to show they're paying money, but the workers are paying that money back under the table, so they don't really have a job, but it's their entranceway into Canada. So there's a lot, like you're saying. There's been a lot.
How you know this? Yeah.
So there's a lot of fraud. The system. Like you were talking about, like I think maybe there was some good intention with the system when they made those changes, and then some people are like, "Hey, I can take advantage of this in a pretty good way." I'm just giving them. You're shaking your head. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Historically, I think
Well,
historically, now,
Well, we had a great immigration.
We
system.
really did,
right?
Yeah.
But when they just flung
it's
the door,
structured, nice, like compared to Australia, US, Europe, like Canada's really like structured.
Well, just on the internal team here, about half the internal team immigrants, no?
Probably, or their parents are.
Roughly.
Parents are,
Yeah, some of them were even young. They were born over there. So if I'm thinking, maybe not half, just under half,
close to,
or like first generation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So then, Nigel, you're again. So then you hear this. You're in this situation now. You have this home. You've kind of like a little bit further out from this stuff. Where does this go now? Like, what's the solution? How do we revert back to feeling like people have hope and more opportunity? Like, what needs to change in your opinion? For the people you talk to, from the conversations you have, your friends, whatever the case may be.
When you say hope for opportunity, that's another side. Like, I hear millennials all the time. Oh my God, it's feels almost impossible to ever own a home in Ontario.
Okay, so how would you explain it?
No, I was going to touch on the other side. Like, you said opportunity. There's also, like, I guess sometimes underappreciated and just people don't take it for granted maybe, that millennials and people around my age, we kind of caught on and grew up like right on the cusp of when technology really started to advance. And all these, like, there's a lot of opportunities that we have at our disposal and have had for since growing up, that even Gen X or baby boomers maybe didn't, right?
Is Gen X right after baby boomers?
Yeah, that's you're the cusp.
Really?
You're in between.
I'm that old that I'm almost baby boomer?
No,
Holy cow.
No. You're definitely at the bottom. You're almost a millennial, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. I'm 78, so I think that's the cusp. Some of them are like around 80 or something. They said,
something like
I'm a millennial, man.
Yeah. You round down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
Round down.
Yeah. So like, I just want to point out the other side that millennials. Yeah, it is more difficult. You look at the numbers. The percentage of our housing that makes up a household salary is high, but there's opportunities. Like, imagine telling a baby boomer that you could go with your buddies, film a video, put it on YouTube, and then become multimillionaires. I know that that's like a very rare example. There's only a slight few that happens, but like, that's unheard of, right?
Yeah, but maybe not multimillionaires, but just off like Instagram influencers and stuff. It is a small percentage still, but it's not one. There's it's in every industry and there's a number of them.
And here's the other thing that
I see Anthony watching them on his computer all the time at work.
That's what I'm saying. And the other thing is like, the advancements in technology, even things as simple that we take it for granted now as like internet access, Wi-Fi. I don't know, call it in the 60s. You're born in some farmer town in Northern Ontario.
Yeah, you have no idea what's going on.
You're bound, and your future is probably bound by is pretty limited. Nowadays, even if you're born up there, you can have a Wi-Fi connection, learn, and you could be working remotely for like a bank. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, that opportunity didn't exist. Like, well, you had to make other sacrifices. You had to move away from your family, be that person from the small town that went to the big city. Now it's there. It's available.
When we started this business, we were running classified. We did it with classified ads, and then to get a web page built, we had to hire a contractor to get a single page website built and pay money for that. Like now, it's like you're talking classified ads in the newspaper. Like one newspaper ad at that time was, I think it was like $600 or $700. So if that thing bombed, it was $600 or $700 out the window. Whereas now you get to test with $20 on Facebook. So there's a good.
You can tell AI build me a website.
Yeah,
it's done.
So there is that side, but then it also, the flip side is now everyone can do it versus specialized skill for it. But Anthony, to your point about housing, I'm curious what you think about this. I moved one of my earlier properties was in Hamilton. The first property was in Mississauga. Then I don't know if it was second or third, whatever. Relatively soon, I went to Hamilton, and the reason I went there is because it was just cheaper. I couldn't really afford to do the investment properties I wanted to in the Mississauga area. It just didn't make sense, and I couldn't. So I had to go to Hamilton to find something that worked. But isn't that similar to if there's not affordability in one area now, for example? So maybe Hamilton, people can't afford to buy a property and invest. Can they go out to like a well end of the world or London maybe or something? Like it's a further out and maybe there's like a different dynamics to those cities. Or is that me speaking from a place there? People are like, well, you've already been through it. You did that. So it's not the same. You don't get it because
No, you're absolutely right. Like I grew up in Brampton and I've bought all my properties in St. Catharines, which is you just have to go further out. But then it's going to continue. You have to go further out and then further out and then further out. Like it just doesn't end. That's what I mean by it's not getting any better. But
as the population growth happens in those other areas,
that's fair.
And those other areas have better fundamental. Like St. Catharines is a vastly different place than it was 10, 15 years ago. I mean, they were working on that QEW, that little bit in the QEW. Allizah, you won't remember this, but there was this section of the QEW that was under construction for I think 20 years. It felt like I don't know. I was like, what are they doing here? Like they've done nothing.
And then as soon as it's done, the traffic was the same as it was before. What was the point of that?
I have no idea. I don't know what that actual construction was, but I went on forever. I don't know. That was okay. So that's what I was curious about. So you're like, okay, that is the case, but you feel like there's got to be an end to that somewhere.
Well, so when you were buying those properties in Hamilton, you could probably qualify by yourself to buy those. I've had to partner up with a person on each one of those, earning entry-level salary and then building up my salary to earning like good money in today's day and age for somebody my age. Always qualifying with somebody else. Like you just get less for your money. You get less. So not only did I have to, and I'm not saying this to be like the victim. Like I'm in a privileged position. I acknowledge that, especially being born and raised in Canada, to Allizah's point. At the same time, I think I'm allowed to criticize when things are getting worse.
That's fair.
And especially when you look under the hood and you see that it doesn't have to be getting worse. It's just due to like incompetence and the system that we're in that it has to get worse.
Okay, so then answer the same question that Nigel went through. Like, how does it get? Well, so for someone like you that's feeling like this, what changes for you to be like, I'm feeling better about everything?
Yeah, for me, owning Bitcoin has been a big source of hope because now my purchasing power has actually gone up.
And then what about the people that I'm sure inevitably some people are going to be like, well, look, you're putting all your eggs in that basket. I mean, that's pretty risky that you're just.
I'm not though. I have my real estate. I have my Bitcoin. I have other investments.
Okay, so then you look at that as a positive influence because of why? Explain to people how you're looking at it.
So to me, it feels like an alternative system is being built up. It's a grassroots movement. It's like a bottom up movement instead of like more top down centralized control. It's not like somebody else is building the system to then give to us, the people. It's like we, the people, are building the system that's more fair, equitable, honest, truthful, and I think is going to allow more human flourishing. Mm-hmm. So I find a lot of hope in that there's this other thing. And once you do your homework on it and you see that it's decentralized, you see that it's actually secure, and you've spent some time in that system to allow yourself to become comfortable with it, to trust the system, and ultimately to trust yourself with the decision you're making, to put your value and time and energy into that system, it's a massive source of hope.
See, I could look at someone like you in this situation right now, and I could be like, maybe that comes to fruition. And then for looking at me when I was your age, I didn't have that option. That option really didn't exist for me. So I had to take a different path, and I bought properties like you've bought properties as well. But then I wasn't able to get maybe this noticeable change in any types of investments I had at such a quick pace. Mm-hmm. So I had to buy these properties, hold on to them. They were self-liquidating assets. I'm not complaining. They were great.
Yeah.
The value went up probably more so through inflation than other things, but it was generating cash flow. I was able to pay off the properties from that cash flow. So it wasn't money from, I was able to put a minimal down payment and have those things paid off. Yeah. But it took time. And over that time, it really changed things for me financially. So, but and you might have that opportunity too, but this I guess what I'm getting at is this, do you feel this is providing more hope for you because you think it's a quicker thing and you're falling into this instant gratification side of things?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. I just think it has, it's legit. Like it's a new system. Like it has a lot of hope. It's like, what's everyone supposed to do? Just buy a rental property? Like,
yeah, good point.
What the entire population, 40 million Canadians, 380 million Americans, like we're just all supposed to buy some rental properties or just like throw money in the S&P. It just doesn't make sense. It's just like, I'm okay. I've got my properties. I've got I'm fine. What about the nurse? What about the garbage guy? What about the police officer? What about the fireman? Those guys actually make good money in Canada. They might be okay to buy some assets. What about the average person? Mm-hmm. It's just not sustainable. We're all going to joint venture and buy rental properties. It's stupid.
Rolex is an art too.
Rolex is an art. The most scarce things.
Yeah. Okay. I see where you're coming from. So Allizah, then you're looking at this, and then you're looking at, in the Philippines, you're looking at asset ownership and that type of stuff. Where's that coming from? I know your family was doing that. So have you seen the same type of inflationary pressures there, the same type of cost of living challenges? And with if people that don't own assets, they're not able to keep up with those things as well? Is that where that opinion's coming from?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think inflation is just not happening in North America. It's all over the world. It's here to stay, like you guys say, and it just will keep getting worse until, till the end of time. But yeah, I was surrounded by businessmen and women, and I guess the inspiration, is coming from, I don't want to keep working until I'm old, because the concept of retirement here is different in the Philippines. Like in here, you can just get a job at a good company and then get your RSP and stuff, and you can like live off of that. Put money in the GIC. That's good enough for you guys to like survive and just live, middle class life. But in the Philippines, you have to have something other than your pension, because it does not provide enough for you to live a comfortable life and, treat your family in the future. You have to have a business. You have to have some type of investment that you did when you were younger, which what I'm like more interested in is real estate, instead of like doing a business like my mom is doing. She has a business in the water industry, and that's a lot of like being present in the business. And I'm also not interested in that. I think my sister is, but it's not what I like. That's just, where I'm coming from. So
did you have these conversations like in your youth at home where you guys would speak about, you guys or girls, sorry, would speak about inflation and just business and asset ownership? Because where's that coming? Like you saw it sounds like through your parents, but when you guys speak like inflation, most people in the early 20s really aren't talking about inflation, I feel like.
No.
So where's it coming from? Was this from before you were taught this stuff, or like,
it's not from my parents. It's from my grandpa. He's very into investing. He's more of gold and stuff.
He would like Bitcoin.
Yeah. He would like, value, like.
Actually, he wouldn't, because he'd be like, what are you talking about? It's not, I can't hold it. The gold I can hold. And I can,
no, but yeah, like he likes investing on things. Like, I don't know if I should mention it, but like, let's say.
You don't have to mention.
No, probably not.
Yeah, don't
okay.
Mention,
but like.
If you're thinking maybe you shouldn't,
I don't think I should. But like things with certain values, that's what he likes to invest in. And he's very into the politics, government. He was also in the military. I learned a lot from him.
Oh, wow. Like he'd fit right in around this office. Can you imagine the conversations? Yeah. We would all learn from him, I'm sure.
For sure. But yeah, I learned a lot from him. It came from him, I think. I spent most of my childhood with him as well. Like I said, my parents are pretty much not present as I was growing up. And I think I learned that from him and my sister as well. Like, we're living like 1,000 miles away from each other, but she's still like pitching in business ideas to me. More so like just funding it, not the brains of it. She's like thinking about, oh, we should do this, we should do that. But I'm like, yeah, sure, if you're like able to propose something to me and I see a good future to it. It's, I think, something that's common in our family that we want to do business. But is it like to the same extent as you guys talking here? Likely not, no.
Well, yeah, I mean, who knows? We're just talking, right? So, but let me ask you guys this. There was someone on the Rogan podcast recently, and they were talking about, I don't know if it was some sort of mental health aspect of things. Mm-hmm. And they, one of the points that they had, and I remember Joe stopped and he was like, I never really thought about it like that. And they're like, look, the more you kind of think about your problems, sometimes it can drag you down with it when you're always focused on them. Mm-hmm. And do you find now that, I don't know if it's social media, I don't know if it's media, I don't know if, because, this type of stuff, obviously people like to see it. Do you think the circumstances are different for sure? Affordability is a factor, like 100%, things aren't the same. But every generation, things are not the same. The gap has been widening, and the gap is wider now between incomes and asset prices. We do the graphs, we've all seen them. But they've always been widening. So for each generation, it's been a little bit worse and worse going by the metrics that we've been talking about. So does social media or whatever, our access to information, is this amplifying things more now? And it's really maybe the difference between previous generations and this one. It is different. Maybe it's not the same. The numbers, the affordability is harder now. Yes, I'm not saying that. But is it maybe just amplified more as well, and it's really not that much of a difference versus previous generations, those incrementally, or you guys disagree with that?
Did you have something? Yeah.
Oh, Anthony's got something to say. He's like, yeah, everything sucks.
Well, I think
I don't think it all sucks.
The availability of information.
Oh, that's Tom. So, no,
the availability of information is a huge benefit, but it can also be a huge downfall as well. Like, now you can see a bunch of stories. You can go on social media and, God knows what makes something kind of trend. Something kind of hits, mm-hmm. and then it hits an algorithm, and then millions of people see it, right? It could have been one person who's just a single opinion. It may not be the opinion of the masses, but then it gets magnified and magnified and magnified. And then people may think that, okay, this is what everyone's thinking out there, right? So I just think
like the Haktua girl. So you're not, because everyone's
I was pretending I didn't know.
Yeah, see, I
tried.
How could you not avoid it? I was looking.
Every generation got that.
I was on X the one time, I guess whenever that started.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is it? And I didn't look at the video like the first 10 times I saw it. And then I was talking to, my wife was there. I'm like, I don't know, this video's everywhere. What is this video?
Yeah.
So then I watched it. I was like, oh my God. And yeah, but to your point, like something, you just never know that something hits that algorithm.
Yeah.
And it just flipping explodes, right? Mm-hmm. It's funny how you laughed. You just refused to comment. She held back. It's like everyone will not want to admit. And for the record, before I said it, I'm like, should I even say that? So yeah, we all had the same opinion.
It's impossible not to hear about that.
That was impossible
nowadays. Yeah, totally.
So okay, so then what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think I don't know. I don't know if now we actually have this big global hive mind to actually tap into how people are feeling on a day-to-day basis, or if it's making things worse, or if it's a combination of the both. And if I had to guess, it's probably a combination of the both.
But we never tap into people being happy and being like, oh my God, I just got my first rental property. I'm so happy. This is amazing. That never gets shared. So are we tapping into the global
I think it
hive
does,
mind?
Though. I got rid of Instagram. I'm only on Facebook to advertise rentals. I have X, and I carefully curate that thing to only follow mainly Bitcoin news. I got rid of all the politics because it was dragging me down. It was making me more negative day to day. So you have to curate your experience on there, and you can go down some weird, dark rabbit holes on there for sure, which can affect your mental health. So yeah, it's a real thing for sure. I don't know how much that has to do with kind of these things, but
because does that focus, if you're on the Bitcoin side of things, let's say in the example that you're using,
more hope there. Yeah.
Is there more hope, or does that potentially gets you a little bit more frustrated sometimes because you're looking at there like there's hope here and there's no hope over here. So then when you're not looking at that side, you get more frustrated with the other side because you're thinking about it more. I'm just asking because of what I heard on the Rogan show, because they're like, look, if you're thinking about your problems more, it can cause you more stress, and they can become more disturbing to you because you're so focused on them. Yeah. And you have to focus on them to solve them as well. So
that's the problem, right?
Yeah, but so is the flip side true? Like, hey, you're so focused on this side. There's hope here. Well, there's no hope here. So every time I'm not in this world and I'm in this world, everything's kind of like a little bit more frustrating to me, and I'm like not as really positive about it.
Yeah, you kind of have to live in this world.
Yeah,
whether you like it or not.
I'm asking, like, yeah, I don't.
It's
I don't
all
know,
one world to me. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like the last few years, learning about the economy, learning about fiat money, and then learning, I think in the last paying more attention to politics for the last 2 years. Like I remember during.
Oh God. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, you're depressed then, 100%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's just. But at the same time, I felt like I had to, because all of a sudden interest rates got more than tripled on me.
Yeah.
And my mortgage payments were all of a sudden $4,000 more each month. It's like I felt like I had to start paying attention to this stuff so that it doesn't happen to me again. It's like, why is everything getting more expensive? Why is it so much harder? Why does my rent keep going up every year? Why does my property tax keep what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And in order to find out what's going on, you have to look under the hood, and it's pretty ugly under the hood.
Yep.
And it can really, it's affected me the past couple of years. But at least I feel like I know now and I can do something about it.
Mm-hmm. And you agree, Allizah?
Yeah, like I'm not where Anthony is at, but I get that feeling too. Like it's almost like a FOMO, but like it's more like knowledge for us. Like we have to know what's happening out there to adjust our actions and our decisions right now. And for him, it's more on like his like mortgage and stuff. And for me, it's more on my like journey in Canada, like my status, how I will be able to get better and invest in the future, like for me in terms of my career.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's how we were forced into that situation as well. Hearing what you're explaining and how you're talking about, you need the information. When what they call the Great Financial Crisis was, in 2008, when that whole thing kind of blew up. Tom and I looked at each other and we're like, what's going on? We were down in the U.S. and we were at this mastermind meeting, and the morning we woke up, people were down there, and we had always looked at the Americans, that group of friends, that mastermind meeting, like they were. I always view Americans as they're willing to take more chances. They're more just out there and they're more in your face. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean they're just more like, yeah, screw it, man. Let's see what happens. And if it blows up, and I'm going to get onto something else, right? But there was like fear in their eyes that they're like, oh my God, like it's all falling apart. And we're like, what is going on? And we didn't understand the money system. So to your point, if the last few years caused you to be like, I got to really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I get it, because we had that moment too, and we looked around and we're like, well, why is this happening? What the heck's going on? And that's when we started getting more serious, I guess, about kind of our journey, because we were investing, and it was more like, we were investing because we want an asset, but it kind of makes some money, then it'll go up in value, it'll pay itself off, not really understanding anything deeper beyond that. And that's when we got forced to go a little bit deeper, and it feels like similar to probably you guys as well, whether it's with your grandfather or you digging down a hole, or Nigel, however your path was as well. It's like once you see that stuff, you can't unsee it. Yeah. And then it's like, then your world changes, and then it's dealing with this new world. You got to figure out how you are going to internally deal with that, because you really start viewing things differently.
Yeah.
So how do people then move on from, like, is that then a solution? Is that part of the solution? Like, so the people that are looking around being like, Toronto sucks. I can't afford, I'm living in this thing. I can't afford this. And I can't buy groceries, and, whatever the things on TikTok or whatever are saying, right? Then is the solution education and trying to understand things? I know there's more to that, but is that the start? Because then they can view things differently and start allocating maybe resources to different areas?
It feels like it's maybe kind of like a life raft. If you know what's coming and you can kind of dive deeper and really understand the metrics of what's happening, and then you can do your best to front run it, right? I guess a frustration for me and with the information, and if you have this information, a frustration for me is that, you look at, I guess, Anthony, why were you, when you got your first investment property in this Bitcoin, what's the goal? Like, what are you thinking of? Like day-to-day cash flow? Are you thinking about your retirement?
Just like if you don't own the assets, you're done. Like
Yeah.
you get bled to death. So
Okay.
survival.
Because for me, it's
Not
like-
even getting rich. Survival, like freedom, the ability to retire one day.
right. So retirement. So it's a
guess
big
so.
one. And then
Financial stability.
Some finances, yeah.
Yeah,
Some,
okay.
yeah, so for me, like
Financial security.
the life raft that I want to try to create, and Bitcoin's part of that, and is you look at your retirement. I'm quite a few years away, and you look at the metrics of CPP and the demographics of the ages and the people paying and the people who are currently receiving CPP, and you're like, wow, this just, to me, I the math isn't fully mathing.
But when did you look at that? Did you look at that because of something else, or that's what caused you to look at the kind of financial system a different way? Do you know what I mean? Like, which came first? Like, when did you piece that together?
It's hard to say. I guess. Yeah, I guess it's hard to say. I guess.
Well, we'll just edit this part out.
Yeah, yeah.
I think just over time, I've seen Nigel grow a lot since being here with his understanding of everything.
True. Yeah. So that's,
I mean, he was just playing golf before.
well, that's a valid point. I mean, you go through life, you go through high school, you go through university, and you're, you're taught
you're programmed.
You do the best you can. You try to make the honor roll. You go to university, and then you get a job, and then you get married, have kids, white picket fence, and that's how life goes on, right? But the more I kind of, frankly, it was when I started working here to really understand kind of what's happening.
Oh, shoot. Sorry, man.
The real metrics of what's happening. I'm like, okay, so I just, sure, I can make the same nominal dollar, have this nominal dollar that I'm making in the CPP or in retirement and plan for that. But as cost of living goes up and cost of everything goes up, how far is that really going to take me, right? So that's where, I look at the, gaining assets to try to front run that.
So what's next then? Like, where does this go from here? If we're in this type of situation now, like what are the next stages? Like, is it keeps people keep getting more frustrated to you guys? Like, okay, let me ask you this then. Are you an anomaly amongst your friends? Like, the friends that you have here, are you guys even talking about this stuff, or you can't even have a conversation around the things that your grandfather shared with you? Can you have those conversations with your circle of friends here, or no?
No. Like, this are not something, I don't think they'll be interested in. And like I said from earlier, we all have different situations. And if I do start ever talking about things like this, it's more like, I sound like I'm bragging, or it's just different. But I get to talk about it with my sister. She understands where I'm coming from and the goals in the future. And I may seem like I'm just having fun and trying to do life, have work, but I actually have my future in my mind every time that I do something for myself. And that's how I, got here, did some changes in my career, and what I'm looking to doing in the future. Yeah,
just so you know, the way I know when we first met you, I think you presented yourself in a way that we're like, okay, there was determination behind your words, and it was interesting. It wasn't just like, okay, I'm just here, it sounds cool, you were just like, no, I'm here, this is my purpose, I'm going to be doing this. And I'm like, oh, that's to us, that's like an attractive personality trait. So you really kind of presented yourself, you stood out from the crowd with that.
That's good to know.
But is that part of what's is that part of what's lacking? Like, do maybe more people need some sort of determination instead of
yes,
just going through? Oh, so where does that come from then? Now this comes full circle. Like, is this now a bit of a problem with the people that are doing the complaining and stuff? Is it some problem lies on them, and they're like, hey, pull up your pants, kind of like what you were talking about. Hey, pull up your pants and go do something.
Yes, I agree.
So you think it's a kind of mix of both?
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the people that you see complaining on social media, it's like, at the end of the day, everyone has to make sacrifices, and and you have to kind of then go through your list and what's more important, what's less important, and then that's how you make your decisions. I see videos all the time on people in Toronto. Oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to rent this place. It's $2,500 for the shoebox in the sky. My friends are in Toronto. I love the city life down here. But it's like, okay, great. But if you have to then kind of pick and choose. What do you want? Do you want a bigger property? Well, to get that, you got to go a little bit further out, and you got to sacrifice your friends, and you know, you got to make more of an effort to see them, and not just every day, right?
You were in Tokyo not that long ago, right? Was it a couple years now? I forget. Weren't you?
Long time ago.
Was it a long time
Not in Tokyo. I went on exchange to Osaka in 2006.
Oh, that was a long time
So in
ago.
high school.
I wanted to see because I was just curious what costs were there for those types of things. But I thought you had been there more recently for some reason.
Yeah, been a while.
What do you think about what that kind of whole thing? Like, is there, because Anthony, if you look at this, right, Allizah is relatively new to the country, but she's interested in structuring things a certain way so she can buy some assets. You were faced with a lot of kind of like challenges, but you ended up figuring it out, right? And ended up owning some assets. And, you know, if we're all agreeing that, you know, all our opinions are that assets help. So you figured it out, you ended up owning some assets. Nigel's ended up owning some assets. He's, you know, into his home and doing other things as well. So what is there, like,
the solution's the same? You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You have no other choice.
So then is it the opportunity still does exist?
Of course, there's always there's opportunity, and in Canada we're lucky to still have a lot of opportunity to start a business. But it feels like
that's not how you felt at the beginning, like flipping 45 minutes ago.
There is
that way.
It's only taken, I think, till this year for me to kind of look around and think, okay, I think things are systemically broken, because I never even wanted that thought to enter my head before. Because if I'm the problem, I can fix myself. If the system is the problem, I'm fucked. I can still do whatever I can, but now it's the bigger fucking system. It's not just me. Mm-hmm. But if it's me, I can change myself. So I'm just going to focus on that. And I think that's where the focus needs to be still. But if we can build a better system, but I'm happy to take part of that, but you got to figure yourself out first.
And I think that's valid. Like,
yeah,
you know, you talk about the system. Anthony is clawed tooth and nail for the assets that he's been.
I've seen it, and all the respect in the world.
Acquire, but like, so this guy is doing his best to keep up. Like, this guy's doing all this stuff, and he's just keeping up
as he's being pushed down.
It's like, right? That's, I guess, the part that feels really frustrating and difficult. It's like, you know, he's the guy who's taking risks, taking chances, sees what's coming, and is really driving for that. And he's doing well, but he's not like, you know what I mean? Like, imagine the people who have no idea what's going on.
Well, that's what it goes back to me. The average person. I've always been driven for business, entrepreneurship, to be ambitious, to want more. That's not everybody. Yeah. To your point about, are you talking about this with your friends? Symptoms. I was at a barbecue on Sunday with some buddies. Symptoms. Like, yeah, everything's so expensive. Houses, food, symptoms, right? Trump, Biden. All right. When do you guys want to talk about some solutions? Nobody wants to talk about it.
And no one wants to talk about the Canadian side. They'll talk about Trump, Biden.
Well, we did our good share of Trudeau bashing.
That's pretty unanimous, though.
Yeah.
There's very few things most Canadians agree on. It seems like that's getting pretty unanimous on that one, too.
Kind of uniting.
Well, his own cabinet, some of them are starting to come out and say, hey, man, it's time for you to leave. So it's like when that happened. Yeah. It's funny because his own cabinet's trying to push him out at the same time that Biden's people are trying to push him out. This is interesting to see what happens. Mm-hmm. So we were laughing earlier about, I don't know. I think the U.S. gets a lot more, I mean, obviously it impacts everyone, but the Trump factor gets a lot more coverage for U.S. politics just because you just never know what outrageous thing he's going to say on stage.
It's better than Saturday Night Live.
So with Trump, like, Trump spent all that money during COVID. Like, we talk about how Trudeau spent more money than any other prime minister. Like, so did Trump and so did Biden. Like, they all print.
And before that, Obama did. Before, like each U.S. president has just spent more and more because this, to your point, that it's just systemically, things are just broken. Like, there's no way around it. You know, and then you see what happens as soon as we start taking money out of the system by raising interest rates. That's one way, right? It's just quantitative tightening, all this stuff. But if there's less money flowing through the system, because as we raise rates, there's less borrowing and less money gets created when there's less borrowing. So the money supply starts to come down as some debts are paid off. Look what happens. Like, look at our economy right now. Every single person, every single business owner I've spoken to, I'm like, how are things, you know, you noticing a difference? Or like, oh yeah, it's slower. I'm feeling it. Like, unanimously across the board.
Yeah.
You know, but this is kind of, in some ways, this is normal. This is free market stuff a little bit because things go up. They're supposed to kind of come down, but we've just now, they're supposed to go in cycles that we don't bloat them up so much that if we had to let them crash down on their own forces because we've artificially blown them up so much, the crash is very big. And I'm not talking about real estate. I'm talking about economically, really everything, right?
Is it a free market then?
No, I think it stopped being a free market a long time ago.
We don't have a free market.
I should have said I don't know if you want to say capitalism, free enterprise, whatever, but it's not anymore. I mean, it's long that we're a long ways away from that. Right. What do you think about that when you hear me kind of say that? Because you're relatively new or here.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at the system. So it's not just me. It's these guys are saying, well, the system's broken. Mm-hmm. So does that then remove some of the hope that you like? What do you think about that?
No, not really. I think for me, the advantage outweighs whatever is happening economically in Canada. Because again, I am a citizen of the Philippines, and whatever I'm making here money-wise, it just gives me a good advantage in terms of investing.
Stronger currency.
It's just stronger for me.
Yeah. It's how we look at the US dollar. Like right now, on when something hits my credit card, the exchange is 1.4. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, why am I working for Canadian dollars when I want to be able to work for US dollars?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's just outweighs all the negative factors that are in Canada right now. And
so you've noticed a difference. Sorry, I'm but you've noticed you feel there's a difference even from when you got here until now. You feel like things are a little bit have gone down, slipped downhill a little bit.
Yeah, well, it reflects in all branches of activities of the government, and that includes my program as well. Like they're cutting out international students in the next coming years. They only want students who are taking masters to get to bring their family or their husbands or their partners with them.
Oh, I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah, they changed it. Like me, I could have brought someone with me if I had a partner, but now they had to change it. They want you to be studying masterals, PhD, to doctoral, to be able to bring someone with you, even your kids or your partner or your mom and your dad. But yeah, they had to change a lot of things in terms of program-wise because they don't want too many people now. It's bad.
So then let me ask you, all of you guys this. I'm curious all your opinions. Education.
Yep.
So they've changed this program for students because now you got to be taking a master's or doctorate or whatever to be able to come in. Okay, to bring someone else in.
Yeah.
But with where we're going and where technology, you mentioned AI before and our access to information, right? And things are obviously more global. You're talking to your sister very easily overseas and your parents and stuff like that. Where does this education go? And if that's what we're using to define people that are then, I don't know what the term is, but let's say qualified or good enough to come into our country or giving them the points for the immigration system, where does this go now? Because the education system seems like it's kind of it seems like it's got to change. I don't know. So where do we go from there?
It's just too many factors because in terms of students coming into Canada, they need some kind of assurance that this is leading somewhere. It's not just exchange program for us to study in Canada. They want some sort of assurance. But now they're changing another factor to it, which is Canada's defining which ones are the skilled jobs in Canada. And they're taking out a lot of them too. Like truck drivers used to be in there, but they're getting rid of it. But then they open up a new program like caregivers and then truck drivers, healthcare workers. They get a much faster path. And it's just a lot of changes, really. But in terms of changing so much, I don't think there's anything in terms of perspective of other international students coming into Canada. Mm-hmm. But Canada is changing a lot to filter them and only get the students that actually have genuine interests, have the capability to support them financially, and to contribute to their economy.
Mm-hmm. So they're trying to find a way.
Yeah, they're trying to find a way. It's just...
And what do you think about the education system, where it's headed? Or is that just a loaded question? Well, I'm just curious because the stuff that you guys have learning. Sorry to just interrupt, but we were talking about some of the most valuable lessons that you were talking about earlier. You feel came from your grandfather, not from school. Some of the things I believe. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, right? I think that's what you said, right?
Yeah.
And then Anthony, you were saying you had to figure this out when interest rates started rising. You're like, I had to figure all this stuff out that you were never taught in school, but matter in your everyday life. Some of the most important stuff that matters in your everyday life you weren't taught, right? And I know we've had this conversation too, Nigel. So So then where's this go?
Well, who runs the schools? It's the governments. I mean, don't they have an incentive not to teach you this stuff?
Universities, though? They're private institutions.
I went to business school. I never learned about fiat money. Never learned about inflation.
So I have a almost 14-year-old daughter. So she's starting high school in 4 years. She's going to be done. If you had a 14-year-old daughter, she's done school in 4 years. Do you suggest? Do you try to suggest, like, how do you sell her on university a little bit? You're like, hey, no, like.
It depends. I think the STEM fields, I think there's still room for that, and you're learning real skills in an environment that seems to allow you to keep learning those things and go out into the workplace and use those skills in a productive manner. Any other program outside of STEM fields, I don't really see the purpose. I think you should go get a real skill. Right? Whether that's working for somebody for free, internship, co-op, something, or a skilled trade, which we're in desperate need of. All my buddies that are doing the best are skilled tradesmen. They're electricians, right? They're making better money than anybody that went to university. They have a real skill. They can build a side business if they want, turn it into a full-time business. I wouldn't go to university ever again. It was a waste of time. Talk about inflation. It's like degrees are like doubly inflating because they're going up in price every year, forever. And at the same time, more and more people are getting them. So the value of them is going down. And you only go there because you get 4 years of propaganda when you're in high school that you need to go to university to get a good job. Then you go through university, there are no jobs.
It's a good way to put it, that not just the cost of it's going up, but the value of them is going down as they've expanded these number of degrees. Because you can get some of the resumes we get when we have job postings here, when you see the degree programs, I'm blown away that I'm like, there's actually a degree. There was one that was in like artistic. It was like they had like a master's in like artistic dance or some historical dance. It was some weird thing. I'm like, so you went to university for years about that? And I'm like, and that's cool. If that's your thing, that's cool. I was just in my head, I'm curious, like where, maybe there was a plan for something specific afterwards. And I'm like, what was that plan? Because I don't know where the university would be like, hey, we're going to offer this program because we think this is a pathway for people to go in this direction. I just don't know what direction that is, right?
To your point about if the governments are running the schools, like I don't really know who's running it. I know the amount of like bureaucrats and administrators versus professors has like skyrocketed. I think that was one of the charts on like what WTF happened in 1971. What was I going with that?
You were complaining about something.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it.
Nigel, same thing.
Yeah, I think
you going back to university today. You finishing. If you go finish your thought.
Sorry. So, but just the wokeness. Kids are graduating dumber than ever, and they're like full blown communists by the time they get out of school. So, like, who the hell is running that?
Yeah.
It's been a communist training camp for the last 20 years. Like, that's
painting with pretty broad strokes, though. You know what I mean? So yeah, like things have probably maybe gone more in that direction, or we see more of it. But I mean, I'm sure there's people that don't subscribe to a certain set of beliefs that are there's people that subscribe to all sets of beliefs that are graduating from university. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the percentage is, and there's a percentage has gone one way or the other, but it feels like you can't just generalize.
It's a generalization.
Yeah, and maybe you're right. I just mean, it feels that might be, it's when people say to me like, oh, what's happening in the real estate market? I'm like, well,
it's local. Okay, it's local. It depends on the program, on the professor, but yeah. I
think at the end of the day, we need to remember that universities are a business, and they're going to sell a program that someone's going to buy. So if there's enough people who are going to enter a program, they're going to sell it. Yeah. Right. Back to the.
So it goes back to what he was saying. STEM, or other programs. You've used STEM as the example, but programs with a real need. So, like, if you're going to be a doctor, an engineer, those types of things.
Yeah.
Right?
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say.
Are we reaching a day? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but because I said this. Someone said this to me the other day. When I said that about engineers, I'm like, well, I don't know. With AI, can't you just say, hey, design me a bridge like that's 4 lanes wide and 200 feet long and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I never thought about that part of it.
This was the point I was going to make. I'm like, so yeah, honing skills and gaining a specific skill set is very important, but you have to be careful because the way AI is going, there could be some skill sets that you're working on, you spend 4 years. And just like you said, that was the point I was going to make, is that you get there and next thing you know, AI has developed, it redundant, you know, the skill set that you create. So I guess it's just, you have to be really careful and thoughtful of what you're doing and how it's going to benefit the basic needs that our economy and society requires and won't be replaceable by technology.
Just one more point on that. Like, before, the universities were the gatekeepers of knowledge, like in the 60s, 70s, and they had the biggest libraries, which were where you would go to access the world's knowledge. That's all been dematerialized and collapsed into a single application, ChatGPT. Like, you can get all the education on any topic you want on the internet for free.
Or internet. Maybe it's just my own bias is not saying ChatGPT because it's
on the internet.
It's so inaccurate with so many things. Still, those things I don't. I guess I get, for me with my, I try to tell my kids, I'm like, just because it's there, don't believe it. You know what I mean? But I know where you're going. I know where you're.
Well, that's the problem too with the censorship now on the internet, because you go to Wikipedia and it's not the facts, or it's the facts with a twist of whatever ideology the person that wrote the facts had.
And we all know kind of like, I've heard what algorithms do and how it's, you know, they mutate and they can serve certain things to certain people and all sorts of stuff, right? So yeah, for sure. But it's a good point. Like, it's all been digitized now. You don't need to go to the U of T, because I remember when my mom was taking her university degree when I was a kid, part-time, and we would go down to the U of T University, and I used to get the what are those little slide things that, you know, the newspaper clipping things, and you put it in the machine and it would go side by side for those old newspapers? You guys are so young.
I know what you're talking about. So I can't name what you're talking about, but I can visualize
the
what you're
overhead projector?
about.
No. Not the overhead. There used to be these machines, and these glass slide things. You'd put it in, and like the whole newspaper were on these things, and it was like an overhead thing, but just for one person, and you'd be able to skip through it.
Oh, well, you might be a boomer.
Oh man. Anyways, I used to go down and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I guess I was a really big nerd, because I used to go down and be like, this is so cool. Look at all these books. And I'd walk through and I just pick different things and open them just to read two things or look at the titles, because I found it interesting to see what was in there. But now it's just all just in your pocket, you know, and
that's a valid point.
You just do it, right? So
yeah. Like, when I try to, you know, perform a task or I'm having trouble with something, whether it's around the house or with like a marketing campaign, I go to YouTube. How, you know, and it's all kind of there in a 5-minute video. Someone's sitting down and explaining to you. So that information is so accessible.
I can tell you from being in school, like, people didn't actually, a lot of people, not everybody for sure, I don't want to keep saying these generalizations, but a lot of people were there to get the piece of paper. To pass the 100%. Class, to get the piece of paper, to cheat their way through, to just get the paper. They weren't there to learn the knowledge.
Yeah, I kind of probably fell into that category too.
Yeah, I would say
maybe by the end. I think by the end I was more willing to learn. At the beginning I was like, this is cool. There's new people to party with. There's a pub in the school. Like, when I was in high school, I had to leave to go to the bar. Now I'm just, because I went to high school for 5 years. I think I was the last or second last year of high school, where in Ontario there used to be 5 years of high school. We had grade 13. And let me tell you, grade 13, you took almost no courses. You had all these spares, and it was like probably the worst thing for me as a person, because all I did was hang out with my friends, and we played a lot of Jatoni and video games. And there's an Italian restaurant that was close to our school that we went to. We met for breakfast all the time, a few of us. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what I did that year. Like, nothing. Literally, it was socializing year.
Yeah. Well, that's like, 95% of university is that, right? 5% is the actual education. And that's all collapsed down now into the internet, if you really wanted the education. So if you're going for the social experience, go for it. Just know it's going to cost you a lot of money.
So what's next? What are one or two things that you guys are looking at? I mean, you know, whether it's finance, personal health, whatever. What's one or two things each of you, you know, that you guys are looking at, that's something that benefits you, something that you're doing that you kind of like, that's been helpful for you, whether it's a routine or a supplement or a Bitcoin or whatever. I know you're saying, like, what is it? Let's end it on that positive note.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty young. Right now, I'm focusing on career and my health.
Is that a nicer way of saying I'm old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm focusing on my health and my career right now. I find satisfaction and happiness in knowing I'm going towards a good direction in my life. And now that I have more free time, like Nigel always tells me, like, you have your weekends now, make the most out of it. Like, I'm trying to make time for everybody, for myself, and to learn new things. A lot of things, and to grow, just, you know, career-wise. Yeah, that's for me.
Yeah, I think I'm focusing more on, because it's summertime, especially just hanging out with friends and family. Things have slowed down a little bit for me. I kind of laugh saying that, but I'm just prioritizing it more, I think, because I've moved out, I'm established, I'm on my own here in Oakville while living with my girlfriend, and I've got the assets I'm happy with, and now I just want to like get some experiences and live my life a little bit, and stay positive. So
cool. Yeah, I like it. Sounded great, except for like I'm on my own. Well, living with my girlfriend. Like that was a passing thought. I'm like, okay, well, that I'll make sure she hears that part.
Away from my parents, out of my own.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
Yeah, for me, it's just focusing on the things that I can control. So, we talked about this a bit. Bitcoin is something that I'm putting a lot of, I guess, eggs into and things like that. So I'm focusing on that. And then other things that I can control is my health. So, I try to get into that routine every morning and work out when I can, just because it's something that no matter what I can do it and I'm capable of doing it. And then lastly, just family, just hanging out with family and doing your best to just maintain a smile every day, even though you look at these, you can get dragged down into these, like we talked about today, very easily into the numbers and the future and what it may look like, but just remember that your family's around you and they're the constant, they're there right now, and you can control that, so make the best of that.
Yeah, live and enjoy life while you're trying to figure it out at the same time, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Cool, guys. Look, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of sit down and share this. You don't have to, because it's different, right? It's like inner thoughts that you're sharing with people that people are going to listen to, but I think it gives good context for people. So I appreciate you guys doing it. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.